Hey guys, welcome back to another Hoops and Hobby podcast. I'm joined by Troy, my wonderful co-host. Troy, welcome back.
In the building. I'm excited. Let's do it.
Anyway, there's been a good slate of games. I think the last couple weeks we've seen some new NBA topics and storylines. What have you been watching?
Well, I watched Heat Warriors last night. An interesting game. No one really played particularly well. Curry struggled. I've been watching. I've been doing more keeping up. That's probably the main game I watched. I mean, I have stuff on in the background, but I think that's the only one I really sat down and thoroughly watched in the last couple days.
Yeah, that game was crazy because Steph is like that level of superstar. He's almost in that LeBron range because if he's had three bad quarters, and last night he had like four bad quarters from like a shooting wise, and then he got to overtime and he played really well in overtime and hit some big shots. I know we say this almost every episode, but it's really special and fun to be watching Steph put up. I saw this crazy stat. He's shooting like the same true shooting percentage, pretty much the same numbers as his unanimous MVP season. Obviously, they're on the cusp of the playoffs, so I think it's not going to be. He's not getting the same MVP buzz he was getting that year, but he's almost at that same level, which is awesome.
Yeah, I actually saw another crazy stat or heard another crazy stat that Oubre is shooting better than Curry. I think it's in the last month or something like that. So I guess that bodes well for our playoff chances.
Yeah, a little regression to the mean after that first month was pretty bad.
Exactly. It was only a matter of time.
Him and Wiggins have both been better, and Draymond was averaging like double-digit assists in the last month. So I think the Warriors are scrappy. Let's put it this way. If I was the Jazz, I remember there was like a We Believe series at some point. I may or may not have been
he's calling it. He's calling it.
Just know if it happens, we said it today, February, 17th, 18th.
Hey, they've been wearing those Oakland jerseys like almost every game. So it's going to be tough with that play-in. I think, you know what I mean? Like that makes We Believe even tougher, but hey, it could happen.
Yeah. Honestly, that's kind of a good transition just to talking about the Jazz in general. I know you texted me recently that you actually picked up a Donovan Mitchell. You want to talk about the Jazz and your new interest in Mitchell?
Yeah, I was never a Mitchell believer. I don't normally name drop it on the podcast, but I'll get it in this one time. When we played him at Wake, he scored 6 points against us the year he declared for the draft. So I think I'm a little biased since then. But with the way the Jazz have been playing and everything, I just can't help but take notice. I think at the very least, they're going to be exciting going into the playoffs. So not to get too far out of myself here, but strictly from an investment perspective, I think Mitchell's a buy. And I'm not sold on the Jazz. I'm certainly not sold on the Jazz, but there's something to be said for the fact that they retain the same exact core, basically. So they have that chemistry. And we'll see what happens. But I wish I could give you a better answer of like, oh, I love Mitchell and the way he comes off ball screens. He's really added that to his blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I think his cards will go up towards the playoffs. Yeah. So that's why I'm buying.
Yeah, I think it's a really good buying opportunity because he kind of fits the bill. He's like a young player, already had a really good playoff series last year, and he's on the number one seeded team. And I think at least from a regular season standpoint, when it gets close to the playoffs and he has his 30, 40-point games, I think you're at a minimum going to see like a 30 to 50% rise. And that may sound crazy, but that's kind of what the hobby's about. These cards will jump overnight. All it takes is one big game for these cards to jump. Him and Booker kind of fit. Like Mitchell started out kind of slow again this year, and his numbers are pretty similar to what he was doing last year. So to your point, it's not like he added any crazy new wrinkles to his game. I think he's still playing really solid. Gobert is kind of taking another step forward this year, and I think Quinn Snyder is definitely the favorite for Coach of the Year.
And I'd put Murray there too. I think those guys are always kind of linked in a sense ever since that last playoff. So for me, I guess they're a little different because Murray has not been playing. He's been below expectations, I would say, so far, where Mitchell has kind of surpassed them, especially lately. But those are two guys who I just think are going to be, just like in the bubble, very exciting players, at least to speculate on close to the playoffs.
Yeah, Murray is. I have a Jamal Murray jersey. I've been a Nuggets fan for the last 3-4 years, but I have to say it's a little disappointing to see after that crazy playoff run he had, for him to follow it up with kind of whatever regular season, especially with the way Jokic is playing. It's like Jokic is fun to watch. Murray is fun to watch when he has it going, but the team's defense is still terrible. I think did they squeak out last night? I don't know. They came down the wire against a pretty terrible Wizards team. Um, and I like Jokic, I like Murray, but I think Jamal, he's getting paid crazy, max level. He has to start performing max level. He's still young, but at a certain point, a lot of the noise. I was kind of always a Murray believer, but at a certain point, you got to do it in the regular season, night in, night out. And I don't know if he's capable of it. Honestly, physically, I don't know if he's capable of it. And I agree he'll have some hype, especially if the Nuggets, make another deep playoff run. But I think those two guys are and Booker in the same mix. I think all three of them will be relevant in the playoffs. They're all young and they all have upside. So I think, Booker is already super expensive. I've never been a big Booker fan from an investment standpoint. How do you feel about Booker?
I was looking at him a while ago. I was really interested, but he got that. It's funny. How long ago? Like it really hasn't been that long, but it seems like ages ago. He got that. He got that Gary V bump. Gary V posted about him back in like May of last year or something like that, and he went up. And ever since then, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm out. I think he's a little out of my price range now.
Yeah, especially for someone who seems pretty one-dimensional. Like he really, truly, he's like Kyrie. He's so clinical on offense. He can score on all three levels. He's efficient, but the defense is not great. This year, the playmaking with Chris Paul there is slowed down a little bit. I think Booker's special, but I do wonder, like we've seen a lot of great scorers in the league, like Melo and all these other guys that have been great scorers, but don't do a lot else. And I think, Booker, I don't want him to fall into that category, but I'm a little bit concerned.
Yeah. Well, I think I've brought this up before, but I kind of use a test for these young guys. And I'm not sure how I arrived at this, maybe because I think this is what's going to happen. I think at some point, Anthony Davis is going to be the main guy on the Lakers. And I always say, could they win a championship together? So I think about Booker and Anthony Davis together. To me, that's a championship contending team. I think Booker would need to take some steps forward, but for me, that's kind of the test I use. And I think the fact that also that Booker can play with a bunch of different type of people, and sure, he's one-dimensional, but also in a sense, that's a good thing. Like, depending on the situation, he can be more of your primary ball handler, or he can be off ball as a shooter. So I think the fact that he kind of fits in next to almost anyone is really important. And that's why I don't know. I've definitely made this point of kind of betting on talent, finding itself in a better situation. For that reason, I would say I actually do believe in Booker. I wasn't a fan of his prices last time I looked, so I'd have to look again and really compare, but he does seem a little expensive, but I still do believe in him.
Yeah. I think your point about him being moldable, whatever team he plays on, I think he could find a way to score or find a way to be efficient or find a way to get other guys open. I totally agree. This is kind of going to transition into another topic. I know me and you had a kind of exciting idea to bring up, and I actually posted 4 different players. I brought up their silver PSA 10 prices. Obviously, that's just one price point, but it's a good kind of litmus test of where all those prices are and compared to each other, especially because they're all young players. So the 4 guys we talked about, and we actually challenged people to pick their favorite or who they thought was the best investment. So the 4 guys was John Morant, SGA, De'Aaron Fox, and Trae Young. So Troy, do you want to talk a little bit about those 4, and then I could get into.
I hate to stomp all over your segment here, and hopefully we can get it up on the screen. But just in case, maybe people are listening with a wandering eye here, maybe you can read the pop count and the price as well, because I know that was on the poll, and I really like that, and I think that's really important.
Yeah. So the 4, I'll go through all of them.
Yep.
So De'Aaron Fox, number 1, 2017 silver PSA 10. There's 443 of them right now, graded at 10. And the price is around $900. I actually just sold one for, I think it ended even less. It was around $800, only because I needed the money. It's funny that it's like the day that we do this segment. Obviously, I actually like that as a buy, but I'm doing some remodeling and need the money. So that's totally besides the point. Still, I think a decent price. Next number is SGA, and he has 426 silver 10s. That's 2018, and they're around $1,100. Trae Young has 1,970 PSA 10s, and they're around $2,200. And John Morant has 946, just a shade under 1,000, and his prices are 2,900, give or take, somewhere entering like 2,700. He's actually really struggled coming back from injury, but I believe in all four of those guys. But I'll kind of give you the floor because I know you had some good things to say about them.
Yeah, so investment wise, especially with these young guys, it's always, can they be number one on a winning team? And for De'Aaron Fox, I'm going to say for me personally, that answer for me is a no. That's how I feel right now. For SGA, I think the jury is still out. I believe in him, but I think it's still a maybe. For Trae Young and John Morant, we don't know for sure, but I would say in general, yes. So it narrows it down to those two automatically for me. And then I'd probably go John Morant, even with that little price increase, believe it or not, if the pop counts were equal. But because Trae Young's pop is actually significantly lower and he's cheaper, that's who I would go with. I have a lot of questions about everyone on that list, but I would have to go with Trae Young right now for value.
Trae Young, yeah, his pop isn't lower; it's higher actually. It's
than
almost,
John Morant's.
Yeah, John Morant's 946. Trae Young is 1,900, almost 2,000. It's 1,970 for Trae.
Oh, okay. Well, I must have read that wrong. But the one thing I will say is with the PSA backlog right now, I think all signs, I would just be very surprised if there's not a lot more John Morant Prism Silvers printed than Trae Young's. So I'd be surprised if over time that John Morant doesn't have a higher pop.
Yeah. And one other interesting thing to say is, like, I think we'll see a lot of these populations rise. Like you said, I think there's millions of cards at PSA right now yet to be graded. I'm sure a couple of these guys, a couple of silver 10s are definitely coming up pretty soon here. But I actually looked at SGA, and I think he had over 1,000 PSA 9. So sometimes you do get some inconsistencies, which is, like, for me, I guess that'll lead me into my pick. So I think SGA out of the four of them is probably the best buy. Under 500, that's a pretty low population considering, it was just in 2018.
Well, his are a tough grade, notoriously, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Well,
no, you're right. 100% right. Like I said, most of them are 9s, and you've had a couple really nice SGA cards over the years. I think, like, the one thing I would talk about is, so I pulled up all their numbers. Off the bat, like, his raw numbers already look maybe the best, if not second behind Trae. And so he's averaging 23, 6.5, 5.5 on 50% from the floor pretty much, and 38% from three. And that's, like, despite being on a pretty bad team where he's forced to take a lot of shots. If you watch the Thunder games, he has the ball at the end of the clock a lot of times. They've actually been scrappy. They have some other young guys that are contributing, and I think they're a well-coached team. So I think the bad team is kind of overblown with them, but to be as young as he is, I think he's 21 right now. He came in at 19 or 20. He's super young, and he's 6'6". He has the frame to be a really good defender. He has the instincts, and I think if he improves on that end, I think he has the most two-way potential out of the whole group just because of his size alone. And I think if the three-point shooting is real, then I think he has an extremely high ceiling. So I think someone like Trae Young, who's already the best offensive player of the group by far right now, I think we can all agree on that. He might have a higher floor, but I think SGA could have the highest ceiling of the four of them. And then you get into the population. If there's 426 right now compared to 1970 of Trae, and his price is actually exactly half. It's 1,100 right now. Trae's 2,200. So those are just the two guys. Like, I like all four of them, but I think for me, SGA is the biggest buy there from that price point.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100% in terms of playing winning basketball. SGA might be at the absolute top, especially because of the defense he plays and stuff like that. My only thing with him is with guards, it's so tough, like how many good point guards there are. SGA is good to me, but he's not, I would say I already not know, but my prediction is he's not going to be a special scorer. So with that, it's kind of hard for me. And he's cheaper, so the value is maybe there and, in these pockets or whatever. But that's the only thing. And like you said, if anything, I'd be biased towards SGA because I own a lot. But that's the only thing that's scaring me right now is I'm not sure he has the firepower to lead a team as a scorer. And you know how the hobby goes. If you're not that guy, then it's a little tough, especially as a guard.
Yeah, it's got to be winning. It's got to be scoring. It has to be exciting. And then, you have to do it's got to be real accomplishments. Like first round exits don't really get you numbers. Dame didn't see his prices increase until finally like 7 or 8 years into his career because people finally realized that he's clutch and it's not his fault. The Blazers haven't really done too much. I think Ja, like we've been doing Ja a disservice not to talk about him and his upside. I think, off the bat, I kind of thought going into it, I thought he would be the biggest buy. That's before I saw the numbers. And that's just because I know his prices were at like 4,500, maybe even eclipsed 5,000. So you're getting a card that's almost 50% off of where it was at its peak. And that's, the whole market's gone up and his prices have dropped a little bit. And Zion's prices dropped as well. So maybe those two prices are kind of tied up together. But I think Ja off the bat seems like he's kind of most likely to be able to win an MVP just because of how special and dynamic he is. He seems, he's good on both sides too. He's kind of a gritty defender, plays with a lot of heart, has just a special scoring ability around the rim, kind of does shit that no one else can do in the league. And I think, like to your point, SGA doesn't really, nothing about his game is super special. I think Ja kind of has that it factor. I know you even said that, like you think he has a high IQ. He checks a lot of these boxes, and some of them are intangible. So I think that would be the argument for Ja would be, can you see an MVP in the future? And if you put a winning team around him, he could be special.
Yeah, I agree. When you were saying special, I was like, yeah, that's Ja to me. He is special. And I think there is some value there, especially with the pullback. The only thing, and I don't mean to get too far ahead, but as you were talking there with these guys, like I think there's value with a lot of these overreactions. I think there's value with Ja. I think there's value with Luka. I think there's also value even with Zion, believe it or not. The only thing when I think about Ja, if we're just going to talk purely about his prices, is what is he going to do over the next couple months for the rest of the season to really get people excited? I think there will be a rise just because that's the way things are going to trend. But I'm almost waiting to buy him in the off season because I think like, especially if the Grizzlies really struggle or if he continues to struggle, there could be a sharp decline. So I'd be interested to see what you think about that. I'm not saying that's the move at all. That's just kind of what I'm thinking right now. Yeah.
I mean, I think the reason why we brought up these 4 players is because they're all in pretty similar situations. They're on young teams. Each team has kind of had their moment in the sun. The Grizzlies kind of came on strong a couple years ago. Last year they made a good run. They were coming in this year with a lot of hype, but with Jaren Jackson hurt and some other guys hurt, they're middling this year. They're 12-12 right now, so they're the 9 seed, I think. And even Ja came back, and I think he failed to score 20 in like 4 or 5 games in a row. So I think to your point, he could be a bigger buy in the offseason, but with Zion playing the way he's playing, and I think both of those guys, I think the Grizzlies will at least be in the play-in. They have a chance of getting an actual playoff berth. I think Ja will be the best player on that team, and I think if he has a couple good games, the prices won't be low in the offseason, unfortunately. Sometimes mid-season or early season, if a team is struggling or a player is struggling, that's the best time to buy. Like you're buying Mitchell right now. Mm-hmm. Zion would have been a good time to buy a week ago because he's been ripping off 30-point games. Zion is playing ridiculous, man. I don't know if you've tuned into any Pelicans games or even just checked the box score, but he's 36 points on like 18 shots, 31 points. He made like 13 shots in a row the other night. He's so special on offense. It's kind of crazy. I've never seen anyone play like Zion.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've watched a little bit. And like he's been doing that. I think he like turned it on a little bit. His numbers are even crazier in the last week or so, but he's been putting up pretty good numbers. So I've said what did we expect? Like I don't know what else we can want besides what he's doing now. The one thing I will say is in terms of the eye test though, I don't know, something is off. I think people have made this point, but his athleticism is not all the way there. And the fact that he won't even look to shoot the three anymore is concerning to me as well. Not to mention the defense is atrocious. That's the thing. I guess that's what I boil it down to. And other people have made this point, but who are you playing Zion with on a winning team? Like they're saying he definitely doesn't fit with Steven Adams, but that's okay. He's not, you know what I mean? That's something you can get rid of. But they're like, even with Brandon Ingram, it's not really a great fit. So I guess that's the kind of concerning thing to me right now with Zion.
Yeah, and they have Eric Bledsoe, and Lonzo is actually playing really well too. I think that team is definitely like half baked or quarter baked of where they're going to be in the next 2 or 3 years, because I think they have two really good building blocks. And I think if we've learned anything from the Sixers, we want to hesitate to say whether or not they fit, because I think there's a chance they can fit, with Ingram being like the crunch time guy because he can create his own shot, shoot threes. And then Zion being, the best player on the floor for the first 3 quarters. But to your point, the defense is terrible. He just gives up on plays. And that's like his calling card, I think, coming out of Duke was that he was going to be this awesome two-way player because he blocks shots, gets steals, is super a tenacious rebounder, really strong, won't get bullied. But I mean, it kind of comes down to his weight and his athleticism. If they're not all there and he's asked to carry this huge load on offense, maybe they're telling him not to, go crazy because they don't want him hurt.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I guess it's all right because the roster will change. Zion is the most important thing. And in general, I've liked the way he's playing. But I'm just not sure what they're doing with Bledsoe and Adams and even Lonzo. Like, to me, it's so simple. Like, I don't understand. Like, when has there been a team and we're like, man, they have too many shooters. I just wish they had some more heady guys. It's too many shooters. So for me, it's just like the fact that they have Adams and Bledsoe out there with him most of the time. It's like, what did you expect to happen for them this year?
Yeah, Bledsoe plays hard, but especially with Zion already not being a great shooter. Yeah, I agree. He doesn't really have. I mean, he's still a great defender, but I don't think he fits with them, and I don't think he's part of their long-term plan at all. I have one other question for you. I kind of asked you this on every episode as well, but it's only because I'm so fascinated by the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. Have you been paying attention to the top of the East? I know the Nets had a crazy comeback game without Durant, without Kyrie, but it seems like it's really boiling down to 3 teams. Have you made up your mind? Are you leaning one direction? Who do you like out of the East? Or at least who do you think has a really the best shot?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that debatably the 2 top teams from last year, like the Heat and the Bucks, I'm kind of like out on. Like they're almost eliminated. Maybe we shouldn't say that. I mean, the Heat, that's my squad, and Giannis, it's a mistake probably always to count him out. But for me, those 2 are kind of out already for me. So the Nets are up there. Just to throw in the quick tidbit, Ben Simmons without Embiid out there, amazing.
42. Did you see that?
I bought. I mean, it's funny how it probably won't work out, but guys, like I have a Michael Porter Jr., I have Ben Simmons. I'm like, these guys are talented. It's no doubt in my mind. So sorry, quick aside there. But yeah, I'd say the Nets for me. I mean, it's just so much talent. I mean, Harden won the game by himself, and that shows you how much talent they have. I think they do need to figure out the center thing, and I think there's a good chance they will. I mean, I don't know what Andre Drummond, like, I don't know how necessarily great of a fit that is, but yeah, if I had to choose a team, I think now I'm pretty decided it's going to be the Nets.
Yeah. I think Nets and Philly seem like the most foolproof team. I think Philly has one of the best defenses. The Nets have the best offense. The Bucks, I think you're probably not alone. It does seem like they're not taking this regular season as seriously. Can't really blame them though after they've been the 1 seed twice in a row and flopped. I just don't know, Bud. If Bud doesn't get it done this year, he's got to get fired.
Yeah, he's got to go.
Because at what point with Giannis and Middleton and now Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez is a super solid 2-way center. They have Dante DiVincenzo. They have Bobby Portis. They have all these solid contributors. I just think, I think I think that team is going to be shaken up for sure. And it seems like there's not that there's chemistry issues, but at least I think they all know the implications of this year, especially with how the last two finished. But I agree that they haven't been looking as good as they looked last year, and the defense has been way more suspect as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I've been playing too much 2K or something, but I just feel like with Giannis or even Ben Simmons, but that's a whole nother story. With Giannis, even if you just get all like a bunch, like some shooters, some different shooters. I mean, they do have shooters there right now, but just I guess my point is, even if they hit reset on that roster, they're at least going to be like where they are now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the beginning. So what's the harm? And none of those guys on that roster I'm very attached to. And I think they would do just as well, if not better, if they basically blew everything up except for Giannis. So why not try something different?
Yeah, I mean, imagine someone like Zach LaVine, who I'm not even a huge fan of, but imagine someone like Zach LaVine and Giannis paired together.
Yeah.
Obviously, Middleton is probably a better player than LaVine right now, but I think LaVine's athleticism, kind of crazy scoring ability, he could do it in bunches, can do it in the fourth quarter when you need a bucket. Middleton is super solid, but we've seen it, right? Like that's kind of your point. We've already seen it and it hasn't worked. Is Drew Holiday enough to get him over the top? Maybe. I think if Giannis is the best player in a series, yeah, I think it will be. But with Embiid in the East and Durant looming in the East, with Harden and Kyrie on that team, I definitely am not picking the Bucks. But I think it'll be a fun race for sure.
Yeah, I mean, give me LaVine, give me Seth Curry, give me JJ Redick off the bench or someone. Like, I don't know, just try something different. Like those are not even like three names that are big at all. And with that, I mean, let's just see what happens. I think it's just, to sum it all up, like you said, it's time for something different.
Yeah, I mean, the Philly did exactly that. Philly got rid of Josh Richardson, got rid of Al Horford.
They're doing way better, exactly.
Way better, and they're just feeding Embiid. They're using Embiid like Jokic on the offensive end, just feeding him every time, and he's that special. He's so dominant. Embiid has always been. You kind of know I have a soft spot for Embiid. I've always kind of been a fan, even when he had that down year. I've always maybe been a little bit biased towards him, but I think this is at least the 1 year I feel a little bit vindicated. We'll see. Hopefully he holds up and stays healthy, because that Sixers team looks really good with Simmons and Seth Curry, like you said. Tobias Harris is playing well. That team, I mean, they're going to probably be the 1 seed, and it's going to be to beat them in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, I got to get a quick tidbit there too. It's funny with how long PSA turnaround is right now. Joel Embiid has had an entire career arc while my rookie cards of him has been gone. It was before graded, the bubble.
Right? Not gone for good. You've gotten them graded. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, they're gone at PSA.
Oh, right.
I'm saying, like, it was before the bubble. It was like, what are the Sixers going to do? Okay, they're looking pretty good. Oh, Ben Simmons got injured. Yeah. Oh, Embiid, does he really have it? He's out. And then summer, is he going to be traded? He's back. He's playing really, really well. And then now it's going to be, okay, playoffs. Is he going to, and all that happened while I have not had any access to my Joel Embiid card. So
we'll see 2024, the 2024 delivery date for those. How long have you had them, actually, for the listeners, if anyone's still listening?
My most absurd one is from the beginning of July. I believe it was July 8th. I sent out a 20 business day order. It's not express, but it's like economy, or it's not bulk, that's for sure. And since July, what has that been, like 8 months?
7 months, yeah. 8 months.
And it's in grading, so it's somewhere. But I think it's still probably at least another month after it gets out of grading. And I think I have a 20-day from maybe just a couple of weeks later that's not even in grading yet. So I kind of just hey, I'll use this. I think all the time, I'm like, man, I should have listened to Tristan, because I'm basically writing all those cards off as like a sunk cost. I'm like, man, when I get them back, I'll sell. I'll see what I can get for them. But I'm like, man, I'm starting over with what I have, because those cards are like kind of dead to me.
Yeah. Wow.
Harsh words.
Yeah, you ended it with dead to me. That's funny. I agree. I think cheaper cards, when you're getting them graded, unless you're doing it in bulk and they're all in really good condition, it's tough to make money. But I actually have like 8 or 8 to 12 cards. I think some of them are at PSA, some of them are at BGS. I think 5 of them are actually Ben Simmons Prism. I'm hoping for a couple PSA 10s. But to your point, it's like if you're waiting 12 months and you get the cards back, and especially let's say you don't get a very good gem rate and you're getting a lot of 9s, it is tough to justify. And that's why I've kind of always been on buy graded. Just buy at the right times. Buy in the off season, buy when a player's down, because you can flip it in a month or two. When a card's tied up, maybe you double it, but Wall's at PSA, you can't touch it, can't move it, can't use it in trades, which hurts because it hurts your ability. It hurts your liquid ability to have stuff to move.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say real quick though. So I have gotten one submission back. I got it back in December, and let me tell you, I did just about everything wrong that I could have. I bought the wrong cards. They're patch cards. I didn't really know how to look them over. I bought the wrong players. I had Lonzo Ball in there. I had Wendell Carter in there. I paid too much. I think I paid like $29 a card because I went through someone different. And I got like no 10s. So I did just about everything wrong I could. I still think I think it was tripled my money on that submission just because like one Tyler Hero hit a 10.
Yeah.
And I guessed right on him.
Yeah.
So I think as long as your capital isn't, if that's like going forward, my plan is like, I want that to be like 5% of my capital is in that grading thing.
Yeah.
But my problem was when I was doing it, I was putting 80% of it. But if you think about it, like the numbers just work out. You know what I mean? John Morant, Don Russ, PSA 10 is like what, like $120 still? And you can get those for like maybe less than 20 raw.
Yeah.
So the numbers just work out.
It's almost 10x. And it's, if you get 10 of them and let's say 4 of them 10, or let's say 2 of them 10, you're making really good money. But I think, I think you also give yourself a little credit. You did go heavy on the Heat guys, and the Heat had a crazy, absurd run. So like you cashed in on Hero, cashed in on Bam. So you didn't do everything wrong. All right, Troy, you did a lot of things right. But I think that's a good point, and it brings up, where me and you stand. Like we each kind of take a different approach. I've kind of taken the more high-end route, sitting on cards, and that's not always been great because I've held a lot of cards for 2.5 years, and then finally given up on them, and maybe I made a little bit of money or I broke even. And I think you've kind of seen the value in getting cards, grading them, and moving them, and especially more recently, it seems like you've been open to moving stuff, at least stuff that you could get back later on. Like you even said, you made a really good point. You sold a LeBron card. I think you quadrupled your money, and you knew you'd have a chance to get that card again. And it's not like you're out on LeBron. It's just it reached a price point where you were comfortable selling. And I think that's something that is definitely interesting because I know a lot of people always will hit you up and will hit me up and be like, well, when's the time to sell? And it's a tough question to answer. Like, how do you answer that when people ask you that?
I think the generic answer, but still the true one, is like when you're comfortable with the profit you've made. And I think, like you said, my rule is if I'm comfortable with the profit I've made, then I'm just selling. That's it. And if I'm going to be able to get the card back, I'm getting rid of it just especially because you can move on to bigger and better things. The only time, I guess, probably I'm going to start getting real philosophical with people when they DM me, and I'm going to say, why shouldn't you sell it?
What does it mean to you?
No, I'm going to say, why shouldn't you sell it? And if they come back with an answer like, oh, well, I don't really want to sell Luka because I think the Mavericks are going to turn it around. They're going to have a better roster. I think he's one of the best players of his generation. So that's why I'm a little worried about selling. Then I'd be like, okay, don't sell them. But if you give me, like I said, what's someone's argument for PJ Washington, why they shouldn't sell? And they go, well, maybe he'll turn it around. Maybe that people won't be so interested in this draft class and they'll still be thinking about PJ Washington. I'll be like, does that really, like, is that real? You know what I mean? It's like, I just feel like they'd struggle to come up with as much on the guys they should be selling. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Sometimes asking a question back, I mean, as corny as that sounds, is like, it does a lot. And that's like, I mean, shrinks get paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to do that because people oftentimes know. And I've even done that with myself. I've talked to my girlfriend who knows absolutely that much about sports card market at zero. Yeah. And usually she talks to me and then asks me questions. She's like, well, what do you think it could go to? Or well, why do you like? Don't you want to? All I'm talking myself into the answer that maybe I wanted to hear all along. But before I know we've been on for almost 40 minutes here. Before we go, I do want to talk real quick about this segment. I think it was super cool to do that. It's the first time we kind of used four players, four cards, and four price points to compare. Each of them were in similar situations, but we had 325 people respond. I posted a quiz on Instagram, and we had 325 people. A lot of well-respected card collectors, people with millions of dollars in cards. And out of those answers, I'll just give a quick, if anyone remembers that segment, I'll give what the percentages broke out to. But it was 325 total votes. 31% said Ja, 24% Fox, 23% SGA, and 21% Trey, which was interesting. Ja was the highest. It makes sense. I think Ja has definitely been probably the trendiest player, him and Trey, out of that group. So that was kind of the responses.
Yeah, I think that's valuable data to have. What did they say? Keep your ear to the ground. See what the streets have been talking. You got to know what the hobby's thinking.
You really do, and like that. I've always said that I try to align. Like usually when I find times to buy it, I align myself with what other people are thinking. And SGA being third on that list, with all those numbers, the low pop, the low price, the good numbers, and the high upside. That's kind of my take. But I think, I might think Trey is going to be the best of them all, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's the best buy. And I guess that's kind of always been the stance.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about it as you were saying that. Like, at the end of the day, sports cards is kind of like sales, right? It's almost like a sales job. And in the sales world, information like that, even just like a survey or like a data set, they pay millions and millions of dollars because of how important that is to like what's going to be the thing that's selling hot. You know what I mean? A couple months from now. So just definitely like we should do more stuff like that, because I think it's valuable for us, it's valuable for the listeners. But even just the easy stuff, like people always say, pay attention to what gets posted on House of Highlights. That's almost as important as a pop count, honestly, as absurd as that sounds. It's true.
Yeah. Listen to Stephen A. each morning as well.
No, not Stephen A. makes too much sense. Who's someone who very little data. Coward.
Skip is a little too much in the data. Skip does his research.
But like I listen to Skip and Stephen A. and like they at least make sense to me most of the time. Sometimes you listen to
Skip. You don't listen to Skip and tell me he makes sense.
Listen to Cowherd though. The stuff he says, he just says things. He really does just say things.
He's terrible. He hates Westbrook though, and I'm not a big Westbrook fan, so I don't hate everything he says, but yeah, I'm not a big Cowherd fan.
Definitely.
We might have to cut that out.
No, we're keeping it rolling.
Keep them all in. Fuck it.
Yep.
Anyways, that pretty much wraps it up. Troy, is there anything else you want to get to?
No, that's it. Definitely Q&A questions. If anyone makes it to this point and has any, we'd be happy to answer.
Please drop the questions down. Like, we're always happy to talk about these things. Sometimes we don't have enough to talk about. So drop questions. If you have any cool segment ideas, we're totally all ears and excited to keep doing this at least once a week. Hopefully more coming soon.
Definitely.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Peace.